esteemed lineup of panelists with us for this panel discussion today. We are here to discuss new generation operations. Since this symposium has begun in the afternoon today, we have already established that there is a need of setting the purpose of organizations now, resetting them, and how speed and scalability is the essence. Okay, but all of this, at the end of the day, needs to be seeded in the operations of the company, right? And the operations playbook of the companies have to be regenerated. Okay, and so far, mostly organizations have largely always been driven by two, radars. One is trying to give, their customers products and services at a low cost while not compromising on the customer experience bit. Okay, but here comes the tricky part. In the last 12 years, we have seen across the board, okay, customer expectations have changed. If I may say so, the goalpost has moved completely. Okay, so organizations, what our research tells us is that the linchpin for organizations' operating model now today is that to be as predictive, to be as proactive, to be as responsible as possible. Okay. However, this is not easy because companies are now trying to serve, beyond boundaries. Okay. Given this whole context, okay, of operations, how they have fared, I want to understand from industry stalwarts such as you as to how do you see the trends in value chains shaping up? Okay, what's the blueprint that you see which is coming up, and what's happening in ground zero in the respective organizations? And I'd like to begin with Partha here.
Okay, so will you kind of just ask, you did a lot of things. What is that you would want me to address?
So how do you see the trends in value chains shaping up?
Okay. That's a very pointed question. Thank you. Because we want to be quite precise in what we say. Just want to give on a practical level some talk. So the COVID came, and with it came that we can't go and visit our dealers at the front end who are kind of either selling vehicles or servicing. So what we said is, how do we connect with them? So we thought about connecting with them remotely. So suddenly we find that our ability to connect with dealers to give them better experience and better service and solve their problem goes up tremendously. Now the productivity is not anymore 3 to 4 dealers. We can do almost like 10x of that in that time frame. And why does that happen? Because one is you are doing 70% is travel time. Each dealer is probably about 4 to 5 hours away from each other. So your travel itself takes most of the time, and then comes the interaction takes some part of time, but then you're coordinating back with HO, with various departments to solve the dealer's problem, take the balance of time. And they are separated by both distance and time. Now, when you solve the problem of a dealer sitting in a central and you can bring everybody who's solving the problem together. And suddenly you have quality and cost, both come down. Quality go up and cost come down. So both are that, like you said, you have to give great customer experience, but you also have to manage things. So both can happen positively. So it's the cost and quality. Yeah. It's customer experience and features. All are enabled together. The next one is back end. When you're looking at a time like that, it is just you get optimization and asset utilization, which is of a much higher order because you are combining the right kind of operational tools. Like, what do we need to travel for is a question to ask from the earlier one. And you need to keep answering that we need because we want experience. We want to shake the hand of a person in the front, want to motivate him, want to be there for him. And I think if we were to put the right one, you could reimagine the back end as well. And now we have to ask the question, why do we need the office itself? Why do we need so much real estate? Okay. And we have to reimagine the entire system with a concept of supply chain. What are the runners? What are the repeaters and what are the strangers? We now do everything together because our assumption is we sit in office and places. Centralizing them means we can bring all good things to them in a single location, and therefore it will be productive. The new technology poo-poos this theory and says we have to think about runners, repeaters, and strangers. So if you were to place them, and I will elaborate if I ask a question, but then we can do a lot of things. Last part, I want to end my comment by saying the company is moving not to 4.0. in terms of manufacturing, but 5.0. The 4.0 is about saying how do we bring all technology together. The 5.0 is my term, which says how do you bring culture as well as the manufacturing to a technology driven. Yeah, it is not just predictive, maintenance and operations, but the culture of the organization is predictive. So those are the those are the trends in value chains and networks and supply chains.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patha. Beautifully articulated. Please hold your thoughts on the supply chain because that gives me a cue for my next question. Mr. Gaurav, if we can hear your thoughts around this, the value chains in your own industry.
Yeah, so if you see, thanks for having me here, first of all. And so if you see value chain, right, it is sort of defined differently for, different industries. So if it's a services industry, the value chain will be very different because the services partner is servicing a customer, and that customer might in some case be servicing an end customer. If you take airlines as an industry, right? So there is an IT service provider who's servicing, let's say, Boeing, and finally Boeing is selling those planes to, an Emirates, for example, who is servicing end customers, at the end of the day. So that supply chain definition and the imperatives of that supply chain change when you're looking at that. Similarly, if you're looking at a manufacturing house, or if you're looking at our business from a manufacturing of drugs perspective, or good drugs as we call them, right, or APIs. When you're looking at that manufacturing, then our supply chain and our value chain is different because we are working on one side with global innovative pharmas who are sort of giving their work to us, and then finally we are working with a whole plethora of service providers who are providing us raw material for those drugs, to get discovered as well as manufactured at the end of the day. In both of these cases, we've seen that there has been a significant amount of change in the value chain, the way the people are looking at it. Digitization has had a great role to play, where now with technology we are able to really cut shorten times, bring in faster, more agility into the whole system, and are able to sort of bring in a great deal of transparency. While there has been a disruption in the way the value chains are being looked at, and while the end customers are being serviced, to one of your questions, right, with the cost and customer service or the customer experience angle, one thing that has not changed is the business imperative and the business priority. Right? So at the end of the day, the way I look at it, for every business, there are two priorities, which is a bottom line priority. How do you bring in efficiencies through faster, better processes? It could be through technology, or it could be just process revamp. And a lot of organizations have actually taken this time in the pandemic to take a step back and really reimagine and relook at processes and apply technology to strengthen them and make them everlasting. But also at the same time, a lot of organizations have also tried to see how technology can really help bolster business and increase business, at the end of the day. I think Partha gave a great example about reaching out to the distributor network in a smarter manner. I was listening to the earlier panel discussion where they was talking about banks, where they've reimagined themselves and created a distinct value in their value chain to reach out to the customers using digital, right? So is whether it's the bottom line impact, top line impact. And finally, I've also realized with pandemic, one thing which has come to light, and specifically, even the pharma side, it sort of has a role to play, is human safety, right? And the human impact that technology has had to ensure that new kind of vaccine has we've been able to bring that to the market in a short span of 8 to 10 months. Vis-a-vis a regular vaccine would have taken at least 8 to 10 years to bring to market. So a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of past knowledge databases is being looked at to really crunch the data to come up with a vaccine that is, today helping solve the problem that we had at hand.
Great, absolutely, Gaurav. So, taking forward from the points that you have mentioned, you mentioned that organizations are starting to reimagine and relook. Okay, here this brings us to a critical juncture. What I want to understand is this the right time to kind of reassess themselves and maybe have a relook at a make or buy decisions or anything to that effect? Like, is this the right juncture when people can start reevaluating that whether it's the right time to make or whether it's better to buy? to help them achieve the same scalability, the speed that people are looking at, what is going to get them there? Any thoughts around that? Partha, if you can make.
Okay, so thank you. I will go first, and I have a hard stop, like you rightly mentioned. I'll probably take another 5-7 minutes, then I'll peacefully go. And to the viewers, I apologize, but there is a board meeting which is starting at 4. I've messaged them that I'll be 7 minutes late, so by 4:10 I'll have to join them. Okay, so and I'm the chairman, so my apologies. So three things that I want to say to what you asked. First is about make versus buy. I said, is that not we are applying paradigms of yesterday for tomorrow? Why make versus buy? The new 3D printing could distribute, make and distribute, or distribute and make. So the concept itself should change. And our operational priority is to say that we make decisions at the point of time of new paradigm. And therefore, what is the next concept I want to put to you is something called as business movements will create new operational value chains. And therefore, look at business movements for tomorrow. And I'm a CFO and a CIO, as you said, and the manufacturer to do. So let me give you a formula. PBT plus PPM is equal to business movement. Yeah. And PPT is not profit before tax, but I just say people, business thing. People, business thing. When they interact with people, process, and machines, they will create business movements. It is already done, right? Amazon was a book, is an insurer, is a finance company, is a movie, but this what you take, whatever you want to pick, it has already transfers many. So the business movements, when it reached, it took new industry forms. Now, the next auto company can be Apple or Google, who knows? Yeah, so this is another business movement. So I think our operation should be decided by looking at this and saying what is the new business movement we are going to create. We'll create business models, but we'll also create operating models. So both of us should be ready to take care of that. The third one is climate change and experiential commerce will define operations and business tomorrow. Yeah, so these are the two things, not e-commerce, or experiential commerce and climate change. So climate change will stop and start industries. Okay. So if you put both of them in the middle, tomorrow's world will be nice. Only the new normal will be only innovative company which is able to take the challenges of climate change and experiential commerce will survive. So have nice as a paradigm. So if we put all of them together, I'll say the risk management of tomorrow is not to manage risk, but to exploit the risks that come your way by looking at business movement, by looking as nice as a philosophy, by looking at not make or buy, but make or break. How will you break the paradigm to create new norms of trust? Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sumita, you're on mute.
What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I resonate with what Partha said. It is not a make or buy in today's day and age, right? There are some things, let's say in the pharma industry, looking at regulatory compliances or looking at security or IP protection, we have to make within the organization and keep very close to our chest, right? But if I look at other things which are sort of non-core to me as an organization, I'm a pharmaceutical organization. I'm great at discovering new drugs. I'm great at manufacturing drugs, but I might not be the best at, building IT products, for example. In those cases, I will go out into the market and I will partner, with the best of talent. One thing that has happened with, this whole COVID and pandemic is that the gig economy has really picked up because people have suddenly realized that distance is not a barrier any longer. Remote working works, brilliantly well. The real estate, models are being disrupted. So with all of that, the gig economy plus working with partners, there are better controls and governance that we have in place now, where I can, work with individuals, I can work with firms, I can work with startups, I can work with partners, right, to be able to make sure that I'm delivering to the end goal that my business wants, what my customers want, what my shareholders and stakeholders want at the end of the day. So it's, so it is definitely not a make or buy. It could be a make sometimes, it could be a buy sometimes. We have to work together in a partnership manner, in a collaborative manner, to be successful at the end.
Yeah, and like Partha mentioned, then wherever you are able to make, why might as well try to break it. And why just make or buy, but make or break.
Absolutely, you have to rethink, right? You have to rethink. Those are
Right.
old paradigms. We have to you have to question at every stage. Only then will we innovate, and we'll sort of come out of this victorious. And that's what a lot of
Absolutely.
organizations have, right? So
Yeah. So just kind of want to join a small point from what Gaurav said. Just think about tomorrow. If a stranger spare part is required at a remote location. Okay, I'm not talking about life sciences. Sorry, Gaurav. I'm talking
no,
about
absolutely.
automobile, which is more,
I
more
understand aerospace as well, Partha, so I understand manufacturing.
so I mean, aerospace and manufacturing is the high end of things. So let's say for it to be manufactured somewhere, transported, hoarded for 2 years before it's used, can 3D printing enable them at a rural place where this is going to be required when it is required at the time it is required? So
Absolutely.
how productive the asset utilization starts to become. So that's the context on which we have to apply some of this.
So
If you have,
interestingly, Partha,
yeah,
I'll add to that. There, Boeing is talking about putting 3D printers in the space,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
To make sure that you don't have to cart things from the Earth for spare parts. Don't need to go to space. You can print them there, right? So,
Yeah. And Gaurav,
absolutely,
just build on it that tomorrow's science we don't know today. So therefore,
yeah.
if you add a 3D printer, print to anything that you can. So even when they are 2 years from now, the new discoveries can also be printed there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Already parts are being printed, right? Body parts are being
absolutely.
printed using 3D technology. So,
Absolutely. I just give one example, and I think we both elaborated. You get that, Sumedha and all the viewers, you get what is possible is yeah. It's almost like the old saying that in Tamil, which says, uh, "Kattradu kayalavu, karkadu kadalaravu." What we have learned is only handful, and what we don't know is like the ocean. So we have
absolutely.
many oceans to discover. So we should have business models which are adaptable to the oceans that we will discover.
Sure. Absolutely. Well said.
Sure, sure, sure. Brilliant, brilliant, Partha. So I come to the, yeah, thank you so much.
Partha,
Gaurav, I'd like to continue with you. I hope you have some time with us. And this brings us to the last fag end of the conversation, where all of this that we have discussed, we are thinking of, rethinking and remodeling and everything. Most of the time, people might have thought big, but when it came to implementation, okay, approach was siloed. Okay, business units, the approach came from a very business unit perspective rather than coming from a very company perspective. Okay, how to break this, and how, what should be the method to madness going forward, such that whatever has been blueprinted, it comes out well. Okay, any thoughts around this? Because we
okay.
have seen some brilliant thoughts in the past. I think even Charles' slides in the keynotes today mentioned that there have been many innovations, but not every of them see the light of the day. So,
Correct.
any thoughts around this?
No, I think that's a very very pertinent question, and I've always been a firm believer of silo busting, right? And earlier on, this topic was covered more around industry to industry, and we've seen multiple examples, right? We've seen Uber, for example, and there is an Indian company which picked up the same Uber model and said, why can't I do an Uber for the farmers, right? So from an outside in thinking perspective, one industry adopting best practices from a different industry is something that we've seen for so many years, right? And today, with tech being available, research being available, everything being available on the click of a button on a search engine, things, the information sharing and democratization of best practices becomes so much easier, right? But unfortunately, and I think that's the reason why I like your question, is because within an organization, somehow we all, a lot of us still have blinders on. So one business unit won't really talk to the other business unit. And I don't blame the individuals. And I think it is also, a cultural shift that we are all going through today. As the new millennials and these, Gen Zs are coming in, they have a very, very different perspective to problem solving. They believe if we can solve it with collaboration, with tacit information which is already there, then why don't we really go ahead and pull that information out and help start solving problems? rather than our age old thinking to say, I've been given the problem and I will be judged on my ability to solve that problem, right? So hence keep everything to myself, keep my cards close to my chest, right? And that is, something that we need to overcome as organizations, and it's more a cultural aspect. The second piece is also as we sort of start doing much more collaborative, and I think this work from home has actually really helped, because today I think 70-80% of the times, at least, I'm on calls and I'm talking to different business units, because that's the only way to stay connected with the business units. That's the only way to understand their priorities. I'm connected with my teams, pretty much 24/7 now, which is, so there's far more communication happening today, which is really, really healthy in a way, because the overall business direction and business goal is actually getting percolated down at all levels, right? So do we have to make that extra effort to really break silos within the organization? Absolutely. It has to start at the leadership level. It has to go down from a culture perspective. But there are so many tools now, which can sort of enable that. So tech is being a great enabler in that whole whole journey. And also, if you actually look at it, things are starting to move from supply chains, like we were talking about earlier, right? Earlier, a lot of those used to be global, are now coming back to local, right? So they are much closer to home now. Some of the banks are creating large tech teams internally. So there is an insourcing trend, which I've seen in some of the organizations. So that is coming back. But all of that is getting enabled because there is a confidence in businesses that they will be able to learn from each other and then progress forward as a business as a whole and not as a department. So there is that change, cultural change, which is happening.